Yep, somebody left it in here from the other class. I don't know. We have two clickers now. See if that one works. Okay.
When Shanaaz first met 4-year-old Marco, he wasn't very interested in reading. He kept to himself, he didn't really talk very much. While Shanaaz didn't take this personally, she made it her mission to find a way to genuinely connect with Marco. And after just a few weeks of intimate time with Marco, she was so excited to see his progress. Not only does he smile often, enjoy reading, but he has made incredible advancements in his learning. Now, Shanaaz is one of 120 Jumpstart members at the University of Pittsburgh. Jumpstart is an early education organization that works towards the day that every child enters kindergarten prepared to succeed. Now, while Marco did receive care, according to a study done with the Jumpstart organization, we see that children in low-income neighborhoods are 60% behind their peers of more affluent communities. And as a Jumpstart member myself, I have seen firsthand the difference that giving a voice to children can make. So today, I'll be informing you of the educational realities that underserved students face in hopes to persuade you towards service in these areas. First, I'll be informing you of the roots of educational inequity, followed by the action that you can take to support locally. So, in addressing the roots of educational inequity, it's important to consider the historic pattern of distributing both human and financial resources in inequitable ways. So let's take it back all the way in history to 1852, when Massachusetts passed its first education law requiring students to attend public education for at least 12 weeks. While this received widespread appreciation to require mandatory education, a lot of the duty of educating students remained solely on the states and not the nation as a whole. And even more so, states relied on cities and towns for funding, which relied heavily on property taxes. So according to an article by Alana Samuels done in The Atlantic, we see that in 1890, property taxes accounted for 67.9% of public education revenues in the U.S. So this means that as the United States urbanized and industrialized and experienced more regional inequality, so too did the schools. So the more poor the families were, the less money there was to actually spend on schools. So in an attempt to better these disparities, an aggressive attempt to say the least, was in a Supreme Court case in 1973. According to an article done by Columbia University, we see that it all started with a father named Demetrio Rodriguez, whose sons attended a neglected elementary school in the poor area of San Antonio. So he decided to sue Texas, claiming that the way that the school was being funded violated fundamentally the U.S. Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. The justices ended up disagreeing in a 5-4 decision, claiming that there is no right to equal funding in education under the Constitution. Okay. So, in conclusion, we see that funding schools matters to society. So now that you understand the historic funding gaps of educational inequity, it's time to discuss what harms are associated with this issue today. According to an article written by Howie Knopf, we see that children in underserved communities experience a lot of health, academic, as well as social challenges. And this is a product of poverty, stress, and trauma that these students experience, and is impacted by neglect, abuse, poor nutrition, parental incarceration, as well as exposure to violence and drugs. So this basically means that students can be affected with their class performance, their school attendance, their emotional self-control, as well as their pro-social interactions. So furthermore, according to data given by Kelly Taylor, she basically said and gathered data saying that children in these underserved communities are 5 times more likely to drop out of high school than in students in high-income families, and they're 13 times less likely to graduate on time. So, in conclusion, we do see that funding gaps matter, and let's talk about possible solutions. So, according to a large-scale study done by students across the country, 15,000 students for over 40 years. According to an article done by Jeff Rakes and Linda Hammond, basically we see that low-income students, when they receive a 10% increase in per-student spending over the course of 12 years of public education, experience an increase in 10 percentage points of graduation rates, as well as a reduction of 6 percentage points in poverty rates. So this means they basically gathered that if there's an overall increase of 22% in per student spending, then we could actually eliminate the educational achievement gap as a whole in these underserved communities. So 3 states, Massachusetts, Minnesota, and New Jersey, have started implementing promising reforms. And these reforms basically are summarized in 3 key practices that they make sure that they implement. The first is funding these underserved students at higher rates or higher levels. We have investing in their equitable distribution. And lastly, we have ensuring that they are receiving high quality preschool. So, according to an article done by Linda Hammonds in Forbes magazine, we see that as these states implemented these reforms, they experienced a lot of success. Specifically with New Jersey, let's talk about some changes that they implemented. They basically offered children high quality full day preschool programs from 3 to 4-year-olds in the highest poverty districts. And they found that as these students were participating in 2 years of this education, they received a lot of success and advancements in their learning. You might be wondering, how can I, a college student, implement these sort of reforms for this historical patterns of educational inequity? We can't change all these states' constitutions and do all this in such a big change in a short amount of time. So what if I encourage you to make small changes that will eventually make bigger changes? So as I mentioned before, we see that New Jersey is very successful in implementing these preschool programs. So what if I told you there's actually an organization on campus that works towards helping these children in these underserved communities? As I mentioned before, Jumpstart is an early education organization that works in these under-resourced communities, basically giving individualized attention to these students, providing them the academic and the social skills, aka the jumpstart they need to succeed. So we see that this is an organization that works. So on Monday, this coming Monday at 2 p.m., I'll be hosting a webinar that basically shows you what you can do to volunteer or to maybe provide financially for this organization. You can donate in-kind services, you can join the College Corps, or you can financially support. And while being financially supporting and providing kind services are very much appreciated, I really and highly encourage you to join the College Corps program, because not only are you able to see the students face to face and be able to help them on your own and with your own eyes, but you're also able to be provided your own funding for college, because they do pay you. So not only are you helping these children in their future, but you're also able to support your own education and your own future. I'd like to end with this. A quote said by Aristotle: "The roots of education are bitter, but the fruit is